Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Cinema Wave podcast. We're here at the Culture Wave Media Network to talk once again about HBO's The Penguin, an unbelievable television series within Matt Reeves' Batman universe. I am one of your hosts. My name is Darian Scalamoni. I am joined as always by Vinny Albano.
Hello, hello.
So much to talk about, man.
Yeah.
The show continues to it's so riveting, and it doesn't, I'm shocked every week at how great it is, but at the same time, I'm not shocked because the quality has just been so on point this whole entire time. And it's one of those shows, I think I said this last week too, it's one of those shows that I get like giddy waiting for the new episode, which is such a great feeling in television because like I feel like we haven't had a show like that in so long. Like we reviewed House of the Dragon, we didn't really feel that way. I mean, Shogun was definitely one like that. But the other thing is like, and this is also a streaming show too, but it's like, it's that HBO Sunday night, 9 p.m. And it's like my whole family gathers around the TV and huddles up and can't wait for the show. I had a conversation with my brother about that and my mom, obviously of different ages. And they like my whole family loves the show and they both said the same exact thing. With this episode in particular, we come off of what happened in episode 5 with episode 6 with the Bliss operation now being run by Oz in the tunnels. And everything is running smoothly for him right now. And the biggest thing for me in this episode is something that we have touched on a couple other times, but I want you to speak to it a little bit more, is the relationship between Oz and Victor.
Oh, yeah.
Because this episode, it's obviously another major focal point in the narrative. So what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, it's so fascinating to watch. It's really, I keep saying this throughout all of our reviews. It's truly captivating television watching their relationship and watching the arc that Victor is going on. Particularly in this episode, we see him kill someone for the first time. And we speculated about what Squid's significance was going to be in last episode. But it was that major leaping point for Vic's character now into this darkness, this criminal, fully embracing the lifestyle. And then Oz has although the subject matter, right, they're murderers, but as a sweet interaction with them where he says like it's just gonna get easier, which is very chilling also.
Yeah.
Although it's like it's weird because it's this comforting moment, but it's really chilling to know like, yeah, you're just gonna keep killing people, but hey man, the edge is not gonna be there after a while. It's just gonna be easy.
Yeah.
And that's like really scary, but it's such a beautiful middle ground that the series has been balancing between good and bad and having bad characters, yet we sympathize with them even though they're bad and they're doing bad shit. So it's like, it's really interesting, and seeing his growth now, seeing him almost become a member of the family, taking care of his mother now, and that other interaction that where Victor pretends that Jack, the brother, is still alive to Frances when she's kind of confused. But then Oz says something. It's very interesting, the nuance there, right? Because Oz isn't particularly smacking him like, don't you ever say that, right? I don't want you talking about my brother, right? But it's weird. I don't know if you'd like to comment on that, but it's very interesting where now it's like Oz really does view him as someone very close.
Yeah, I want to go back to really quick you talking about, in particular, the way that the show is doing this yin and yang of a lot of, not just Oz, really a lot of characters. I mean, Vic and Oz and Sofia, how you do sympathize with these characters, but at the same exact time, it's something where you know that they're bad people doing bad things. And I think this show does that unlike any other show I've ever seen. It's like, you're like, man, it's tough what Oz has to go through and how he feels about certain things. Then you're like, oh my God, he's just burning people alive. Like, it's so crazy.
Yeah.
But in particular, that moment that you were talking about, when they're having breakfast at the table together and Vic sort of plays along with Frances's Alzheimer's, dementia, whatever it may be. And then Oz sort of has that freak out moment. I think so much of it is that, and you see it in a later scene too, Oz isn't prepared for what life is going to be without his mother. If and when we get that, we obviously have to wait and see. But I think the biggest thing is that he doesn't want his mother is the only one that resembles sort of strength and goodness in his life. And with her going off into La La Land, which happens naturally with Alzheimer's or dementia, and Victor playing along with it to not confuse her even more and make her upset, that's something that I don't think Oz can live with. And you get it sort of spoon fed to him later on in the episode. At the way that even the end of that scene in particular ends, when Francis is basically like, "I'll show you," and then the next time you see her, she's like in a freezing cold bathtub. Like, I don't know if it's a suicide attempt, which we don't know, or she's just, again, her mind is so gone that she just thought that was something that she'd be able to do, and she was confused about the water temperature, whatever it may be. But I think that, like you talked about, the relationship between Vic and Oz has definitely evolved into such a way, and you see it even the way, like you said, he embraces him after he finds out that he killed Squid. And like, there's real love and compassion in the way he hugs Victor, and he embraces him, and he tells him, like, instead of being like a couple episodes before this, he's like, "You were supposed to be there for me," like specifically being like, "You're my henchman, I need you." You've seen that relationship develop over time, and he's does so much as to say, "You know what? We're on top right now. You just went through a hard thing. I need you tomorrow. Just go home and take care of yourself," which we didn't see early on with this relationship.
Yeah.
So I think that's super valuable. One of the things that's really touched, and it's been touched on the whole series, but this episode in particular, it beats you over the head with it in so many great nuanced ways, is classism and what class means in this show. And kind of playing off the Vic and Oz thing we talked about, I think it was episode 3, when him and Vic sit down at the table and Vic talks about his father and all those things. In this episode, we get it in so many ways. We get it told to us as an audience. We get it in terms of visual aids with the dichotomy of, so like this, and I thought it was so unique that just the way that they presented it in this episode. Sofia and Sal and Oz and Vic, right? And Francis. Sofia Gigante, Sal Maroni, they're representing luxury at the highest degree. They're drinking wine. They're making fancy dinners. It's all elegant. They're in these fancy mansions. Oz even makes the great dialogue where he talks about, like, their heads are so high that they wouldn't even think to look low, because Oz possesses that grittiness, and so does Vic, of coming from the slums and coming from the underbelly of what Gotham is, to where that other side of it, it's like when Vic makes the breakfast and Oz says, "It's like when we went to the diner," and then Francis responds, "Crappy plastic menus," and then he does a salute with the different gangs with beer instead of saluting with wine. It's remarkable how they're able to really paint a picture of what this world is. So I wanted you to speak a little bit to, like, what you thought about how they attacked class in this episode in particular.
Yeah, it's particularly interesting. It's some of my favorite. I feel like I'm biased whenever a series or piece of media implements that type of messaging. I always love it when it's done right. Obviously, I think, not to go too off on a tangent, but Parasite is one of the I think one of the best films to ever tackle classism in a way that it's pretty on the nose, but it's not like speaking to the audience, and the Penguin does it great here too. Little things about, even if we wanted to, speaking of Parasite, what like I said, I'm going to pull this into the Penguin conversation a little bit, but in Parasite, it kind of builds on this idea in Korea where the rich people live up, right? They live in the mountains. They live in these rich homes up above. And then the people in poverty are living literally in basement homes, under the ground. And it's implemented here too, because what are they doing? They're underground. They're going deeper. They're going into Crown's Point, right? They're kind of burying themselves on, this metaphorical ladder of classism, the lower class, but also going lower in a visual sense as well, right? Going underground and whatnot. So it was a little cool nod that I think, I don't know if it was intentional or whatnot. I'm gonna say it was intentional because it was pretty brilliant, just little things like that. And I really enjoy even going back to episode 3 when we're talking about that conversation of Vic and Oz in the restaurant, right? There's a high end restaurant, and he's like, these two guys, right? And they make it out, and it's seeing them in that environment is really interesting. And I almost can't put a conclusion on my thoughts particularly, but almost just like these almost it is a sense of excitement, right, when I'm hearing this messaging, because it is a messaging I feel very powerful about, or I feel very passionate about. I mean, in a real life stance, and it's just overall interesting. I think it adds this level of complexity to the show that makes it more than just super or I shouldn't even say superhero, but like super villain gangsters in Batman land. There was also another thing that I wanted to point out. Oh, it's just that they're just the average guy. Oz always, and even having that insight within his relationship with his family, with Francis and Vic, they're just regular guys. They're just regular guys that fell into crime and are now killing people. Don't get me wrong, but they constantly are making this effort to say like, we came from everyone else. Like, I had a brother that died, and my mother is struggling, and Victor's family, who unfortunately passed away, and they can't support themselves, so they had to resort to this life of crime. And also on top of that, the constant idea of Oz and this is a long-winded answer, I apologize, but Oz keeps on bringing up that idea of that gangster that he looked up to when he was younger.
Rex Calabrese.
Yeah. And that idea to me is almost like the hero of the lower class in a way, right? Almost a Robin Hood figure. And Oz and Victor are attempting to live up to that and attempting to kind of shape themselves in that archetype. So it is really almost a crying call for this lower class within the world of Gotham.
I can't agree more. There's a literal line of dialogue that's delivered early on in the episode where he puts his arm around Vic and he goes, "They're going to tell stories about us one day, Vic," because he wants to resemble the modern day version of what Rex Calabrese represented for him in protecting the underbelly of Gotham and being this, like you said Robin Hood figure. It's like that's his idol, and that's been a very consistent through line, literally through like the opening scene in the season premiere when he kills Alberto Falcone. And it's so it's so great to me that Oz feels this vindication and this real feeling of, why not me? Like, why can't I be that? Because I looked up to this person. I'm going to do everything in my power to embody and resemble my idol in life. And I hope we get like a visual of. We're still waiting. I think it was still shown in the trailer that there's a flashback of Oz as a kid. I'm still waiting.
Ooh, okay.
We have 2 episodes left, so I'm waiting to see that and what that means. If we're gonna get like, I envision like this thing where we get like just one scene maybe of a flashback of a young Oz, and then it's like his face as a kid, and then it just like morphs into like Oz in current day. And I could see that happening and how they do things like that. It's just so it's really, really a credit to the storytelling that is done in the show, because they craft characters in such a great way. There are so many parallels between characters. And you get the 2 conversations about class towards the end of the episode, right? You get the one conversation between Sophia and Eve when she goes there with the intention of killing her, and it resembles a real respect level for both of these women picking themselves up by the bootstrings despite all the things they've had to endure and overcome in their lives. Eve being this headmistress of hookers in a dangerous criminal world like Gotham, where Carmine Falcone is killing all these women left and right. And Sofia, who was framed for being a nut job and then is genuinely not the person that wants to kill these women and didn't kill these women, and she goes so much as to literally let Eve win and live, I guess you could say. And then you have the scene where Oz is talking to the gangs, and and I love it because it's like a perfect follow up to when he goes up to the councilman, who's played by Billy Walsh, for anyone who's an Entourage fan. I was like, oh my god, it's Billy Walsh. But when he goes up to him and he's like, he goes up to this guy, literally, he could have demanded anything. He could have gotten, you could have robbed them, he could have got money, anything. And he's like, I just want the lights on in Crown Point. I want the lights on. And it's not even necessary. Of course, it'll help his business operations in the tunnel, but it's more about giving his mother a place to live where she can be warm, and he doesn't have to worry about protecting his mother when he has so many other things on his mind. And he gets to this point in the meeting where he's like, these people over here, these politicians, these what do you call them, soft-bellied patsies. He's like, they don't know who you are, and they don't give a shit who you are. They don't know what your name is, and maybe it's time that they do. And it's like he's providing this like super heroic escapade for the low-income, gritty bugs of Gotham. And I think that's so brilliant, the way they craft that, where it's like, there's a part of it that you're like, fucking stick it to him. But then you're like, he's killing people. Like, this is not somebody that you should be rooting for. And it really does resemble, we talked about Breaking Bad last week and the Heisenberg effect and the Tony Soprano effect. Like, Oz has totally embodied that. And Sofia is that whole other side of it. Genuinely. So it's just, there's so much to talk about with the show.
Another thing too that we can't forget is how fun the show is too.
100%.
Like the show, and that's a testament to I think Colin Farrell, not only the writers, but Colin Farrell. We've already talked about how good he is as the Penguin, but even just this energy, the humor that he brings to the character, and the sense of this blend between grounded crime drama, this grittiness, but also this very goofy comic booky type of big cigar in the mouth. Like, I personally, there was a particular scene and shot, 2 seconds, that I love, is at the beginning of the episode when he sends out all the the guys that hand out the drugs. They're all on the motorcycles, and he goes, go out there, right? He has a big cigar in his mouth. He's like, like he's mumbling about. That scene almost made me giggle a little bit, but in such a good way, because I was like, wow, this is so fun to watch. Like, this is such a fun portrayal, because then in the next scene, we'll have something super serious, and all of a sudden, we're like, holy shit, we got to take this serious now. Like, his mother is not in a good situation, or he's killing someone, or someone's getting, killed.
It's like a thrill ride. It's literally a roller coaster that you're on with these characters, and I couldn't agree with you more. It's between the writing, like we said, is superb. The acting gets better every week. I can't even believe that that's real, but the acting gets better every single week. You're seeing, Renzi Feliz is so good in this episode. Carmen Ejogo in her scene with as Eve with Sofia. That scene's fantastic between the two of them. And I just think the other thing that we didn't really talk about, because we talked about it a little bit last week in terms of where we might end up with Batman. The way that this episode opens, it's very obvious, unless it's a plot hole, which I would find it hard to believe with the way that they're crafting the story and this world. We know that the first 5 episodes take place in a short amount of time. It might be like a week, it might be a couple weeks. We go from the end of episode 5 where Oz and Vic discover the tunnels, and Vic is still a little bit hesitant. He's obviously working with Oz, but they don't have that relationship that we see. It seems like it's formed over time. So we get like a little bit of a time jump. And we don't know how much that is. I do think it was good, though, that we got that and that it was indicated so well in the writing. And it was smart the way they did it, with like him being able to just like, oh, now they're up and running. Like, the operations are going with the Bliss, and like Oz controls the Bliss on the streets now, because we have to end up most likely by the end of the series, we have to be on the cusp of Batman Part 2. If Batman 1 takes place right before the events of the Penguin, and then Batman 2 is supposed to... Penguin is supposed to transition right into Batman Part 2. So how did you feel about like the time? Were you thinking about that? I mean, again, we're so encapsulated with the show. Yeah. But are you thinking in the back of your head how this is all going to connect?
Honestly, not really. Not right now, at least.
Okay.
I'm so curious how we're gonna end up though in next episode and the episode after that. Because knowing that Sofia is gonna be playing a big part now, based on the headlines, supposedly she's gonna be playing a major part in Batman Part 2. And then knowing, Oz can't die here, I feel like there needs to be, and we could kind of transition after this into the next point of the end of this episode. Crazy, right? Sofia walks in
so crazy
to Victor and Francis.
Did your heart feel like it was gonna jump out of your chest?
Yeah, a little bit. I was like, it was creepy almost. Like, also, okay. My thoughts are all over the place, but really quick, I love her costume design and makeup now. She has made this full transformation, right? After that scene where, she kills her family and she's now wearing the revealing dresses. She embraces almost this persona of the Hangman in her own constructed way. And the makeup and the hair, the makeup and costume is so awesome because it's grounded, but it's also like the most Batman comic booky stuff ever. Yeah. She's wearing like these really gothic feathered jacket, and I'm like, oh my, like this is crazy. Yeah. She has like her eyeliners only applied to the bottom waterline, and I'm like, and now she has a mullet, and it's so cool because it's I don't know for me,
but it's that's what I'm talking, dude. It's the details of the show, that make it so great. I mean, even the thing where we get another great little one before we jump into like all the theories and stuff. When Oz does discover Francis in the bathtub, and she gets dressed up, and he says, just like Gilda, and then that song plays at the end of the episode when Francis is dancing with Vic, and it's a callback to when Vic first meets her, and it's referenced as that's the song from the movie that she's always watching. That's important. That's important character detail.
I didn't even catch
that.
And
then he Oz says to her, like, you look just like Gilda, Ma. You look beautiful. Like, there's a real intrinsic aspect of, like, it reminds me again of like the way that Marvel keeps like these diaries of like these characters and how they really did. Like, Matt Reeves has such a real and again, everybody that's working on the show, obviously, but this world of Gotham is so distinct. But it feels like Batman. It really does. It feels like this is the real grounded, gritty version of what Batman would look like in the real world. I mean, even the way that he's battling against politicians, like we've talked about the way politics are interweaved between Batman and the way that they're so interweaved in this show and dominance within the way the drug running is happening. And then there's politicians getting involved and it's just great, dude. Like the little details of the show are better than so many shows that are doing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I 100% agree. And it's like kind of working off of my last thought, right? It's when it coming from a technical standpoint and a storytelling standpoint, like I mentioned before, it's doing a really great job of having these extraordinary kind of, you have these goofy moments, you have this comic book moments, but it's still so grounded and it works, right? Like Sofia's whole look in this episode, from the mullet to the makeup to the costume, I think it's fabulous and it works perfect. It looks beautiful and it works perfectly within the Batman world. It wouldn't work in another show, right? It wouldn't, but it does here. And kind of going back to my other thought before that, where the ending of the episode, right? I forget exactly what I was talking about. But we're now brought to, we talked about this theory that by the end, okay, hold on, sorry. I'm trying to retrace my thoughts. Right? So we're talking about leading into the Batman Part 2.
Yes.
And then what it means. So Sofia It's going to be playing a big part. Oz needs to play a big part. He can't die here, in my opinion. I think Francis is, this is my theory, which we talked about last episode. Now that Sofia is there, she's going to hold them hostage. It's going to give an ultimatum to Oz, right? Where it's going to be your mother or Victor. And once his mom dies, if his mom dies, that's when we see the real switch of like, okay, now I'm going to be a cold-hearted penguin, and no puns intended, penguins in the cold. But yeah, that's my current theory going into the Batman Part 2. So
I like that theory. I think it's also interesting that we get the reveal. It's a great reveal that Sophia believes that all of Penguin's family is dead, not knowing that his mother is still alive. So when she gets that realization, when she's seeing it happen from afar, holding the crowbar and seeing Vic and Francis dancing, you're just like, what the hell is gonna happen here? And that's where, like I was saying, like my heart was like jumping out of my chest. And I mean, again, like, so you love and you hate cliffhangers. It was such a good one. It was one where I was like, come on! Yeah. Like, I was like, why are you ending the show right now? Like, I need more.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it such an unbelievable television show. Like, I can't, the quality is just tremendous.
Yeah, and to add to that too, you talked about the details. You just reminded me. Another such a small but brilliant detail is you hear Sophia breaking in. You hear the crowbar and the door break.
See, I didn't even hear
that. Yeah, it's so because at first I was like, what the fuck was that? I heard a loud like, and Vic, you see Vic whip his head around, but then he gets distracted by Francis, and they start dancing. So he's kind of like, oh, it's probably nothing.
Does it happen at the same time as the power coming back on?
It happens like while yeah, like while that's kind of happening.
Yeah.
Right, power goes on, right? The music, she's like, leave the music on, and you see Vic she's beginning to dance. You hear it. Vic snaps his head. He's like, what is that? Should I investigate? He's like, oh, probably not. I should keep my eye on her. And then they start dancing and he gets distracted.
That's crazy. I gotta watch the end of the episode again because I missed that.
No, it is such a small but brilliant detail. So
show's so good.
Yeah.
Show is so good. Well, it's a lot, man. We talked about a lot of stuff. The show has continued to impress. It's definitely one of my favorite pieces of creative media that I've seen this year. It makes me again a huge fan of the Batman the movie. It's been a few years. Getting back into this universe has been great, and my anticipation level now is like through the roof to see what's going to happen within this world, within the Batman. And you had said on last week's episode that it was being rumored heavily that Sophia is supposed to be in Batman Part 2.
Yeah.
So interested to see what happens there. Going into next week, and just again thinking theories for the end of the show. I think Francis is gonna die. I think we got the foreshadowing. Of her even saying like, if I get to a certain point, like you got to be the one to take me out, which is such another powerful scene and very real and very raw. I hope Vic lives.
Yeah.
I don't know what happens there. Some people are, I mean, again, this might be people like really theory hunting and really wanting to keep it to comic related stuff, but some people theorize that maybe he gets beaten really badly, a la like a Jason Todd. And then Oz has to leave him to do what he needs to do, and then maybe Batman kind of takes him in under his wing, which would be really interesting. We talked about early on in the show how like, and it's still happening, that like Oz and Vic are resembling this Batman and Robin dynamic. So it'll be interesting to see if they decide to go a different way with Vic. I just think Renzi Feliz is such a great up-and-coming actor, and I love his character in this world and what that means also for Oz going forward, and what that could mean for Sophia and him interacting with other characters. I want to see a scene like with him and Gordon. Like I want to see like what that would look like with him and Jeffrey Wright. It's just like,
oh yeah,
I think it'd be great. So there's a lot to. We got 2 episodes left. Really excited about it. I know Zach on our channel is also really enjoying it. We were talking about it over the weekend. I think he's hoping to come in for the finale, which would be great if we can get him
Cool,
on here. We can
cool.
talk about it at a larger degree and what it means for Batman and stuff like that. But that is going to do it here for our episode 6 review and discussion of HBO's The Penguin. We've been covering the whole entire show. We have a new playlist on YouTube if you want that it covers all our episodes that we have 1 through 6. If you guys want to go back from the beginning, if you guys are binging the show at the end, definitely check out our episodes and our discussions on them as well. We'd really appreciate it. You can follow us on social media. All that stuff is below me in the video as well as in the description. A bunch of stuff we're doing for you guys in movies and television. We just wrapped up coverage at a festival here in New Jersey. We're covering a lot of movies upcoming. Vinny had a chance to see one of the big Oscar frontrunners, Anora.
Yeah, it was great.
And he's going to be talking about it soon on the channel. And Liz and I have our review of We Live in Time up. A bunch of other stuff we're covering. So look forward to that. Just signing off, I'm Darian Scalamoni.
And I'm Vinny Albano.
And we'll see you guys next week.
This is The Culture.